Welcome to the 129th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's podium. For over a century, this stage has united visionaries and leaders from politics, business, community, and the arts to share insights on the most pressing issues of our time. And with Canada in a pivotal moment, it's more important than ever that we come together.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. So I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon again, everyone, and a warm welcome to those joining us online at canadianclub.org. Once again, I'm Shazanne Chu, President, Canadian Club Toronto, and your host this afternoon. As we gather today to explore Canada's housing crisis, I'm reminded that this is not a new conversation, but one that continues to evolve in urgency and complexity. In fact, in 2019, Anna Bailão stood at this very podium in her role as Toronto's Deputy Mayor and Chair of the Planning and Housing Committee. In her speech, she shared that we've been afraid to talk about housing, just like mental health, because people think speaking about it shows weakness. Today, we're fortunate to have her back, joined by a remarkable group of leaders to take this conversation further. This event is presented with generous support from Ellis Don, Fengate, Faro, and LiUNA. Thank you for your partnership. To our season sponsor, the Canadian Bankers Association, and Air Canada, our official airline sponsor, thank you. We also thank Canada's Forest Trust Corporation, our nature partner, for helping us reduce our carbon footprint by planting a smart forest in our honor. And today we're pleased to welcome students from TMU's The Dais and from York University's Environmental Studies program. Now, I'm sure you'll have questions about what it takes to solve our housing crisis, from affordability to construction to zoning. Please use the question cards that are on your tables and hold your hand up. Our volunteers will come around to share them with our moderator. And for those joining us online, please click the Submit a Question button on the right side of your screen, and we'll be watching out for those as well. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our panel. Anna Bailão is CEO of Build Canada Homes and a longtime champion of housing affordability. Her leadership spans both public and private sectors, and her experience is central to today's conversation. Victoria Mancinelli is Director of Public Relations, Marketing and Strategic Partnerships at LiUNA Pension Fund, and is a powerful voice for Labor's role in sustainable development and infrastructure. Jamie McKenna is President of Fengate Real Estate. She brings deep expertise in investment strategy, housing innovation, and building for impact. And our moderator today is Nama Blonder, architect, urban planner, and partner at Smart Density. She's a nationally recognized advocate for smarter, faster, and more inclusive development. Please join me in welcoming our panelists and moderator to Canada's podium.
very cozy. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I was tasked with asking all the difficult questions I could come up with. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a bit of a negative tone, but it will get better, I promise. Our housing starts are now as low as 2009. What could be done to reverse this? How can we clean any bottlenecks that have accumulated? Victoria, is it okay if we'll start with you?
Yeah, of course. Well, first let me point out the obvious of how nice it is that we have an entire panel on building of strong women. I'll start with a positive before we go into the next. We simply need to just go back to the basics of building. A lot of us in the room here have been building homes for centuries. We know what's needed to get it done, but oftentimes the industry is being stalled by a level of bureaucracy. We need to be opening more public land and stop the NIMBYism around transit-oriented spaces, because that's where we should be building high density. We need to be incentivizing more, especially when it comes to rental and affordable builds, like the announcement that Anna made this morning that I'm sure she will dive into. And quite frankly, we just need to have more of a will to get it done, more of a political will, more collaboration with industry, labor partners, nonprofit partners, and get shovels in the ground without lengthy, burdensome delays, approvals, permitting.
Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Victoria and I work very closely on this. The reality is that in order to build a home, 30 to 40% of the costs are either municipal charges, other forms of taxation. So Anna's doing a great job in making announcements to give us that relief, but the reality is the cost is going to make it outside of people's ability to buy, and as long as that economic dynamic exists, it's really hard to get housing started.
I would say that there's no one order of government or one sector that is going to solve this. So we need everybody to play a role. So if we start with the municipality, it is important that we take out the bottlenecks. We have quicker approvals. We have lower development charges, even though that I'm not saying that it's only the municipality to pay for that infrastructure. That's a longer conversation. When we talk about infrastructure, it is important to note that we still need that infrastructure. It just can't be always on the back of the new homeowners and the new renters, which is the system that we have right now, and that needs to change. Then we go to the provincial government. We also need to ensure that it goes faster, because everybody talks about how processes need to change in the municipality. A lot of those processes are provincially. You know, a record of site condition, have you guys tried to get a record of site condition? All the bottlenecks that it is, sometimes heritage designations there is at the provincial as well. There's a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of bureaucracy that happens with provincial governments as well, and that is really important. Have some stability also on the Planning Act. There has been some changes, but we need some stability, because I don't know about you, but I can't keep up with the changes that are coming in the Planning Act. We need to have once and for all changes and just stop. And then there's the federal government, which is really important to have some fiscal incentives as well, and a role on how to roll out those incentives for the market. And then it comes the role that Build Canada Homes plays. And I'm going to do a bit of an infomercial, but you know, this is the opportunity. Build Canada Homes is not the federal housing strategy. Some people think, oh, Build Canada Homes is now going to solve all the issues. No. Build Canada Homes is part of the federal government strategy. The strategy includes making sure that infrastructure and housing is now part of one ministry, making sure that CMHC, the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and us are working very closely together. And then there's other tools that are going to be done by finance, like HSD and other ones that many of you have been advocating. All need this to be done together. Build Canada Homes is going to act in a part of the spectrum that, to be honest with you, a little bit, the market doesn't act. You know, we can't expect the market to produce transitional housing, for example. It's deep, deep, deep affordable. Market is not supposed and cannot suppose. We need the government to invest heavily on that kind of housing. And then move into the affordable housing, which is really important to create the partnerships that we do with a lot of nonprofits and honestly with a lot of you, with the private sector as well, to create that affordability. And we're going to be doing all this while being a catalyst for something that also needs to come down. As we talk about the government fees coming down, the way that we build and how we build needs to change a little bit. And so that's why we're being a catalyst to try to create that pipeline so that factories like Faro can scale up and can produce more housing, and that then La Una can have the appropriate manpower and woman power to do that work, because that's another shortage that we have, is skilled labor and the time of building. So we want to be a catalyst to create that pipeline to change that a little bit, at the same time that we need to tackle other issues in that housing continuum and have the government investing heavily on the transitional housing.
And Anne, sorry if I just, you made a really good point there that I think gets lost, is that things like transitional housing, deeply affordable social housing, those are different financial models.
Exactly.
But it gets lumped into the entire affordability crisis. So you look at a developer that's trying to achieve certain returns, well, that's a different model.
Yeah.
So it gets all blended, housing prices all get blended, it all becomes one lumpy issue, but you've got to go one category by category in order to get to the bigger problem.
100%.
I actually, Anna just said something, we need to change how we build. And one of my questions that I have today, what about the mismatch between what people need and what we built historically? Jamie, Anna?
Yeah, I can absolutely comment on that. And one of the biggest issues that we have in Toronto is like the exclamation point on this topic. So we were delivering anywhere from 30 to 40,000 condo units for many years in Toronto, and they were being pre-sold and bought up really quickly. Well, 60 to 70% of those buyers are investors. And those investors are taking those units and then they're renting them out to people on a short-term basis. And here we are today. Certain rules got in place, certain economic aspects came in place, financing costs went up, the investor market completely disappeared. And so here we face a continued build-out of these units that nobody's buying because they're not livable. So there is a real shift in the industry right now to acknowledge that if we're going to be successful as developers, we need to build livable units. And the big players that understand this are now focused on the end user. But we have a shift that we have to face through. We still are going to have upwards of 70 to 80,000 units delivered over the next couple of years, and then it falls off a cliff. If you look at deliveries in 2028, we go from 40,000 to 900 is the estimate. That in Toronto, just talking Toronto specifically. But within those deliveries are these investor units. So something economically has to be done to absorb those. In the meantime, there is a shift that groups like ourselves that are focused on long-term ownership need to build end-user product that families can buy. And I think that is a really important part when you think about the housing crisis. You think, well, so much volume has been built. How do we have a housing crisis? Well, a lot of that volume was unlivable volume. And it was the families that couldn't afford to buy something that fit their needs. And if you look at the stats today, 25% of households are doubled up in Canada, 20 to 25% depending on the region. That means that a quarter of our households have two families in it. That is demand that hasn't hit the street yet.
Jamie, I will add a question and then feel free to answer it all at once. The ratio between income and what it actually takes. So I feel like it's a good opportunity to merge these two questions.
In terms of what you have to make to be able to afford?
Absolutely. And I was at a conference last week that they said that income in Canada only went up half a percentage in comparison to OECD countries that went up 8% at the same time.
Yes.
It becomes harder and harder to make sure pricing and cost of housing is in some healthy relationship to income.
So I think what people sometimes forget, they look at the cost of housing, they look at the cost to buy, they look at the cost to build. The cost to build is actually coming down right now. Financing costs, like the interest rate's at 2.25%, that is not a crazy number. So the cost isn't as much the issue, although I will complain about taxes again, and municipal development charges. But we as a country have not kept up on a productivity basis. So on a per person GDP basis, we have not grown in the last 10 years in a meaningful way. So actual Canadian incomes need to find a way to keep up with the normal cost of housing. So cost of housing coming down 5%, 8%, that's great. That doesn't solve the issue. The other side of the equation also has to come up and meet it.
Yeah, I was just going to add on what Jamie was saying about that there has to be a shift towards the bigger units. And for that, there has to be some systemic changes that need to happen. The way that we finance the condos needs to change, and the way that we build. I mean, how do we expect an end user to wait for a unit for 7 years? Because sometimes that's sometimes the time that it takes to approve a project. So all these things that I had mentioned, the approvals process changing, the methods of construction, it's all going to happen. It's all going to help to have that shift that is much, much needed. And also, our financial institutions need to be part of the conversation in the way that we finance these condos as well.
Yeah, very good point.
And at this, maybe you can take the lead, and Victoria, I see, if you could answer as well, please. This sector wants more predictability, lower costs. We want it to have faster delivery. What needs to change to create a better system of delivery? As a whole, like private sector, not...
We've been talking people in the sector have been talking about this for so long. The alignment of all the governments is really important. You can't have one government doing one thing, and then, you can't have the federal government removing the HST on rentals and then municipalities increasing the development charges. And what you were trying to do is out the window. And it did happen. So you can't have this. So government alignment is really important. I think now that, especially in certain markets, one thing that we need to recognize as well is that the housing crisis is very different across the country, very different. The markets are very different. What is happening in Ontario and BC is completely different from what's happening in the Atlantic provinces and out west. And the economics are completely different. But it is different. But it is important to mention that that alignment needs to happen in order to have that systemic change. That, I think, in my opinion, that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, I agree with Anna, and in addition to the alignment is the political will to do it as well. So City of Toronto and today City of Ottawa have initiated a incentive stream. In the City of Toronto, the rental incentive stream, LaUNA was one of the first to break ground using that stream that waives DC's lower costs and expedites approvals to get shovels in the ground. We broke ground about 2 months ago now, and we will be bringing forward attainable, tangible housing solutions, 448 rentals and 89 affordable homes in the Mount Dennis area. And that's because, in partnership with the City of Toronto, there was a political will to expedite and actually get shovels in the ground, not just performative statements, but to actually do it today in Ottawa. And it made a very similar announcement in partnership with the city, where they're going to be incentivizing to get more shovels in the ground on attainable, affordable units. So the solutions are there, but now are they going to be carried forward to other municipalities?
If I could just add, I think it's really important, the kinds of partnerships that we announced like today. It was a $400 million partnership between Build Canada Homes and the City of Ottawa. They're going to be waiving property taxes, development charges, permit fees on 2,000 units that we are going to be building in federal lands. We have a significant amount of land in Ottawa. So not only are we going to be bringing land, we're going to be bringing all these development charges and our money from Build Canada Homes. So good projects for everybody to start thinking about how you're going to develop those projects. And then the other thing is that we are going to be helping finance 1,000 units that it is on their pipeline. We're actually creating an implementation table to make sure that there's no roadblocks, no red tape. We're going to move fast. Shovels need to be on the ground by 2026. I talked about the systemic changes that need to happen, the way that we build, the way that we fund infrastructure, all these changes need to happen, but they're going to take some time. And in certain markets, especially in Ontario and BC, it is crucial that we will work on a two-track solution. We need these immediate actions, and I actually think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to put everybody together, working with their creativity. What Fengate is doing with some of the projects, working with the city here in Toronto. I hope that we're going to be able to work with a lot of nonprofits and private developers to get shovels on the ground. Everybody's sitting on land that needs to be developed. Everybody has nonprofits that they like to partner. So how can we bring whoever has the best expertise. Build Canada Homes is not going to be building directly. We're not going to be building, we're going to be developing in the sense that we're going to be coming with the land, we're going to do the rezoning and then putting it out to tender. But we're going to be making sure that everybody comes to the table with their best expertise. Nonprofits operate, the private sector builds, and other capital sources are also brought to the table so that we can put people to work and actually get shovels in the ground in some of these projects right away.
I'm going to change the order of my questions because you brought up a very important topic that I would love to hear all three of you please answering this. What a successful partnership looks like because I read BCH, everything they published, I read it, I did my homework. and private developers are not only encouraged, but it's mandatory to partner with nonprofits when they come knocking on your door. What does a successful partnership look like? What does it take? It's not easy to have these partnerships in place and make it fruitful.
Sure, I think the dentist is definitely one in the city of Toronto that I already mentioned. And in the city of Hamilton, when we talk about nonprofits, there's an organization, I'm not sure if anyone from Indwell is here. So the province transferred lands to Schlegel Villages, which now is partnered with Mohawk College, St. Joe's Healthcare, and Indwell. They're going to be developing a heritage site as well as adjacent land to develop long-term care and hundreds upon hundreds of supportive housing and affordable housing. That is in partnership with government, nonprofit, and private sector. So again, when there is the will to actually get something done, this is what we can achieve. And so we have to get the politics out of the way, we have to get burdensome red tape out of the way, get shovels in the ground, and provide housing solutions that people are experts in. Listen to the experts and let's just get it done.
What I'd add to that is that I think anybody knows that the best type of partnership has alignment of interests. I've been in very bad partnerships and I've been in very good partnerships. And if I use a profit example, so in a profit example where you're 50-50, no matter how angry or frustrated you guys get at each other around the table, you know everything that you do in your interest will benefit the other and vice versa. So if you think in the world of nonprofit or you think about co-op housing, community housing, it's not about alignment necessarily of financial interest. Now it's alignment of interest of what you're trying to deliver. And that needs to last long term. You cannot put a short-term profit-seeking developer that wants to exit a project alongside a nonprofit that is looking to hold something long-term and make a difference in the industry, or in the community, I should say. So I think to me, it's making sure you have alignment of interests, what do the nonprofit want to achieve, and making sure you bring the right developers that are focused on a greater good.
I would just say that we have lots of examples of successful partnerships in the city of Toronto. We just need to scale them up. We have Vic here from Create.to. He has a number of partnerships. I think they just broke ground on the one with Windmill and Co-op. That's a successful partnership. We had Dr. Buzari here with Dunhouse, a successful partnership between UHN, all three orders of government involved. Those are successful partnerships. What it's needed is the opportunity to scale up. And now we have Build Canada Homes. One of the things that many that have tried to develop these partnerships and attract more private sector and to help create the scale, because we have a fantastic nonprofit sector, but if we need thousands and thousands of units, we don't have the opportunity to do that. We need to bring these two together and we need to bring the three orders of government. And what always, and until 2 months ago, I was on that side advocating, we needed flexibility because all the federal government had, it was a program with box, 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 box. And if you didn't fit into that box, that's it. You wouldn't get money and you would get, $50,000 a door or something like that. Build Canada Homes doesn't have a program. We're not a program. We're an engine to deliver and to partner. We're going to be partners with you. We can come in very different ways. The idea is to be that last linchpin that is going to make the project work. We can come with equity, we can come with guarantees, we can come with funding, we can come with grants, we can come in several of these, but what do we need to make it work so that every partner can take what they actually need to get the shovels in the ground? And I think this flexibility, this different approach to look at things, but very much partnership. We're not gonna fund all the projects. It's interesting. We've been having some Even municipalities coming to Build Canada Homes and saying, oh, we need 300 million of grants, 300 million of financing, and we're off. Here's your portfolio. That's great. What are you doing? What are you putting on the table? And that's why Ottawa today was the first one, because they came to the table not only with a pipeline, but they came to the table with something to offer. It's a partnership. They said, we are enabling housing. We're going to put millions of dollars on the table by taking away the development charges and property taxes on these properties. We're going to speed all these, and we need help on these 1,000 units that we have in the pipeline. This is successful partnership, and that's what we're looking for.
Just to jump in as well, one that hasn't been mentioned is the partnerships that we have with our Indigenous communities, right? And I know Ellis Don and Faro, we have tremendous initiatives underway to connect with Indigenous communities, build procurement, skills development. And so that's a very important partnership that I think we also need to give our attention to.
And I think it's an important, what you're hearing here is that everybody's looking for solutions. And Anna, you and I did a panel, remember, a couple months ago, and it was nothing but complaining. Yeah. And I think you and I walked away and we're like, we're not gonna get anything done if everybody just sits here and complains about the problems.
Just a few days of me taking this job and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing?
I remember you took the job 2 days after the panel. I'm like, did I say something stupid on that panel? I hope not. No, but seriously, walking away from that, it was an eye-opener that we can get caught up in the problems, and what you're hearing from all three of us is, here's some solutions, here's some paths forward, and that's where our mindset needs to be. Very true.
Everyone is saying, shovels ready, and then there's the part after that, which is construction. So Victoria, we had such an interesting conversation over lunch, because for me, this is exactly the side, right? I focus on the approval side, and then over to you, and we hear that all the time, right? Like, if there's one thing I've heard in the last 10 years is that construction costs, construction labor, there's going to be a shortage in that. By 2033, I believe 22% of your trades are about to retire. Then what are we going to do with immigration? Because what are we going to do?
We're going to attract talent.
No pressure
and
on the
more.
question,
No.
yeah.
So I'll set the scene maybe of what's currently happening from a labor perspective in the industry. In Toronto, low-rise residential is at a complete standstill. When it's at a standstill, that means no jobs for our members and skilled trades. These are jobs that they rely on. Our members are multi-skilled. So our carpenters in the residential sector that work on framing for homes are now working in our heavy civil sector because our transportation infrastructure is booming. So they're able to provide and transfer their skills to heavy civil. The problem that we're going to face is heavy civil pays a lot more than residential, which means when low-rise residential picks back up, we're going to have a lag in our workforce. So we have to be able to meet those demands and be proactive in how we're meeting those demands. What doesn't help the workforce, and I'm sure some people have seen the headlines, is attacking investments in union partners to be able to provide training and outreach and apprenticeship programs. The organizations like LAUNA have set industry standards for training, mentorship, outreach, and apprenticeship. We partner with education partners all the way from elementary to college and university. We partner with nonprofits, our women's shelters, Indigenous communities, you name it. I can guarantee that we have formed a training partnership. The issue that we're seeing now is when the provincial government established this incredible, historic, unprecedented fund called the Skills Development Fund. It is being met with controversy, with roadblocks, with headlines. This is a fund that is directly investing in people and in potential. It is amplifying the work that organizations like LAUNA are leading, and it's giving us more growth and support to attract more people. We can't in one breath say we have a labor shortage, and then in the next breath attack investments that are investing in those very people. These are investments that have boost opportunities for justice at-risk youth, which means they get off the street and they never repeat the crime again. It has Oaks Revitalization has one of the highest retention in the industry. We partner with organizations like Building Up for marginalized communities. In the province of Ontario, there's a 13% increase in women apprenticeship registrations. So policy is working. We just have to keep up with demand and keep pace because all of our sectors are now competing with each other. We have residential, we have heavy civil, Pickering, the announcement in Pickering just the other week is going to create 30,000 construction jobs for our members. So if we're not being proactive now to keep pace with that demand, then we will see a shortage
Okay. A big part of BCH is the modern methods of construction. Victoria, I will start with you, but maybe we can walk it down, because there is the misconception that modular is the opposite of construction labor.
Right.
And I will merge some questions together because we're a bit short on time, but my conversation with modular providers, and again, I know that under modern methods of construction, there's actually more than just modular, which I think is very important to mention here, but we're all talking about the pipeline. Can we see some, again, predictability? We need volume in order to make this less risky for them.
So we have Faro here with us today. LaUna's pension fund is not only investors in Faro, but it is our members who are working on the shop floor in the plant. So I think the labor industry has to stop being so hesitant to adapt and modernize. Because if we do that, then we fall behind and it is our own fault. We have to be able to adapt to new methods of construction, upskill our workers, upskill so they can meet new technology demands as well, and not be scared of new methods that are coming in. We have the training, we have the labor pool, we just have to have, again, the will to do it, and our members are now succeeding in this space where I know that there's other unions across the labor force that are still hesitant and worry that their jobs are going to be replaced because they don't have a seat at the table to say, how do we do this? How do we get in? How do we make sure our members are still protected and taken care of? And just adapt. New doesn't have to mean bad. It just means you're adapting with the times and actually creating more opportunities for your workers.
Jamie?
Especially in today's technology environment. But I would say the modular issue or the modern methods of construction.
Yes.
I know. it's Monday.
MMC.
Yeah, MMC, there we go. A lot of groups that are actually delivering in this space, modular, for example, are new. They're small, and they're attracting capital that are supporting them. So they don't have a great deal of liquidity. One of the issues they have is going to be bonding. So anytime that you're bidding on a project that requires bonding, you're asking these groups to put up capital that they don't have available, and then they're going to their investors and begging for some kind of line of credit or something along those lines to enable it. So partnership with these groups that are literally just coming out of the ground to be able to help them on the bonding side is critical. Secondly, I would say from an R&D perspective, as we talked about, technology is changing so rapidly. Methods of construction are changing so rapidly. That requires time and investment of dollars. And so support on the R&D side for these new groups coming out. Otherwise, you're going to see either a collapse in the industry or a reversion to where we were 5-10 years ago, and very few of these firms being successful.
So I'm going to pick up on what Victoria and Jamie said, because Jamie talked extensively and very clearly on what the industry is facing right now and what we'll face in the future if we don't adapt things like modern methods of construction. Yeah. A significant shortage of labor if we don't start innovating, if we don't start doing things differently. So congratulations to LaUna for being, visionary in the sense that you see what's coming, you're preparing your workforce and your members to respond to what we need. And at the end of the day, it's our homes, it's the homes for our kids, it's the, we need to make sure that we continue to have good jobs for people, but of course we want to make sure that they're done at the most affordable and efficient way. So I think that is really important, and it's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a couple of our team members on my way here on how to make sure that in RFP, especially as we are developing our land, we create the opportunity to have apprenticeships. We put it as part of our RFPs to have the space for apprenticeships because we want to develop the industry, but in order to develop the industry, we need to develop the workforce. And so we cannot only be a catalyst for that industry, we need to be a catalyst for the workforce. So we're just having this conversation because I think it's an important piece of the puzzle as well. And the other thing that through Build Canada Homes, we're going to be creating a pipeline. Our goal is not to be investing in factories and so on, but what the government is doing as well is bringing us together. So us, the Ministry of Industry, Housing and Infrastructure, so that we can be that window where some of these factories are going to come and they might not get the money from us, but they'll get it from another department. And bonding and so on. So like those things, those are some of the tools that we might be able to help and might be able to come and might be able to bridge. So that's the importance of the flexibility of Build Canada Homes, to not only create the affordable housing, but also be a catalyst for the modern methods of construction.
Yeah, and I plugged the provincial training policy, but the federal government has an incredible and impactful one as well. It's called UTIP. It's the Union Training Innovation Program. And that one I bring up important when we talk about modern construction, because we need to understand the needs of industry and how development is going to be changing over time. UTIP is able to provide grants to union training centers for that very reason, to modernize, to adapt to new technology, new methods of training. So that fund is going to be very impactful in how we build this modern, modular, whatever you call it, modern ways of construction.
We need an easier
Yeah.
An acronym.
MMC, yeah.
MMC.
BCH,
Yeah,
MMC, more letters. Anna, you made an announcement this morning in Ottawa.
Not me, the Prime Minister did.
So sorry to not give the right credit. No, but there was a bit of drama because we were so afraid that you won't make it here in time. I felt like you're landing with a helicopter on the rooftop of the Hyatt.
But it was worth it. It was worth $400 million.
Yes,
I was just about to say that
I
I was happy for Ottawa, but I was a little sad for Toronto. I'm Toronto team.
Oh, I sent a few text messages saying, over to you, Toronto.
Okay, good. What does a municipal partner, we're now talking about the private sector and federal, and you talked about, the coordinated efforts. What are we expecting from municipalities, actually? What does a strong municipal partner look like?
Well, definitely not sending us just applications saying we want money. But it's coming to the table, being with land, being with incentives as well, and being with creativity, right? And again, here in Toronto, there's already a lot of projects that are being done with private sector. And how can we leverage this? How can we stack our contributions? How can we, with CreateTO, with private sector, with the nonprofits, do more at scale and quicker? Mm-hmm. And instead of just talking about one project, can we talk about 3, 4, or 5, so that we actually create the scale and the speed that we need and the predictability for the factories that need to know, okay, we can get the workers, we can invest in scaling the factories, we can invest in what we need in order to create that scale. So that's what we're hoping to have in strong partners at municipalities. We keep hearing here in Toronto that the speed of approvals has improved significantly. We're going to be able to test that with our sites as well, because we're going to be developing directly as well some of our sites, but some of the ones that we're going to be financing, because we're going to be involved quite directly as well.
Jamie, do you mind? I would love to hear your perspective.
So what I would say is within an hour-and-a-half drive, I can deal with Toronto, Oakville, Mississauga, and Hamilton City Councils. And my experience with all 4 of those in my 90-minute drive is different. And it all comes down to, does the municipality actually prioritize housing as an important issue that they want to put forward, or are they going to prioritize their public view of what their community is saying over progress? Mm-hmm. And so the groups that have been successful is A, prioritized red tape, B, made it clear what the process is, and have been willing to stand up and support housing that's right for the community and not put, am I going to be voted back into office, ahead of advancing the housing file.
I received some cards from the audience. Okay. Are we okay for time? Do I have, with the light, it's so hard to see anyone. Okay. Land makes up 50% of the cost of a home in a low-rise sector. How do we get all levels of government that have land to contribute this land that does not produce any tax base to give it to development to lower cost of housing? So again, low-rise sector.
We're going to be looking at all our sites. So we have 6 that have been announced. 4 have RFQs out on the street. Actually, another one in Longueuil got announced this morning as well. And another one will be before Christmas with another partnership that we're working on. So those are 6. We're looking at prioritizing another 18 sites. And if there is one thing that the Prime Minister is also very focused on, is to change the process that we have access to surplus land, and there's going to be a lot of land, let me tell you, coming our way, because he is committed to speeding the process of making that land available, and federal government has significant amount of land. And we're looking not only at land that is surplus, but how do we have the opportunity to potentially do some infills on the sites, especially in more of the rural areas. There's a lot of sites, there's a lot of, not that I'm picking on Canada Post, but for example, there's a lot of Canada Post buildings that, yes, you might still need the Canada Post, but you could do a lot more with some of those sites and some of those parking lots. So we're going to be looking at some of that as well. And so the federal government is very committed to put land on the table.
And I would agree. I think some of the greatest partnerships I've seen, both at a municipal, all three, provincial and federal level, have been scenarios where excess land has been rolled in and form the equity of the partner. And then there's a partnership with that federal or depending on what level of government to build out. It's not dissimilar when you get your head out of the government space and into the private sector space, going and buying retail, which we call covered land play, where we invest in the space that we know we're going to be able to build up, and you partner with groups, they roll in their land, they roll in their asset, and you're able to create more affordable housing because your initial cost base is lower.
I want to ask about climate. I'm going to read this, but let's see, where it takes us. The climate crisis is only growing in. Sorry, a word I don't know how to read, but bear with me. How will speeding up the building balance environmental sustainability? Aren't many of the roadblocks related to standards of safety and environmental sustainability? Should there also be a focus on maintaining existing housing stock? But feel free to take the climate question, because I actually didn't ask, so feel free to take it to your expertise. Jamie?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off the climate piece. I think it's very difficult to merge those two issues into one. So anytime we make an investment as it pertains to climate, it's actually the right thing for the asset, not because we're trying to make a headline. So reduced energy costs, lower long-term operating costs, reduced insurance costs because of climate risk mitigation. So you've sort of got to separate the two and see the benefits of the climate investment. One of the things we've worked on, for example, is standardized, that we want to hit LEED Gold on all our projects. And we actually did the underwriting and saw the financial benefit of doing that outside of the housing crisis. Like in my mind, you can kind of bring them together, but if you lock them together, you're going to create a dysfunctional cross-purpose between the two issues.
Housing has a lot of economic advantages. I talk about the project Done House very often on how for the provincial government saves them millions if they were to implement more of that model in ER costs and healthcare costs and so on. But so does producing housing in a way that is climate friendly. At the end of the day, there's no better way to save on the operating costs than if you are a gold LEED, a net zero. It's the smart thing to do. It's a smart business to do. So if you look at the BCH investment policy, we're not mandating you to do. We say we look favorably, but we look at your operating costs. We look at everything, and we know that if you are a building that is LEED Gold or net zero, that you're going to do a lot better than if you're not. And you'll do even better if you use Canadian lumber and Canadian steel.
Agreed.
Okay, speed question, okay? Because I was given the sign that we need to conclude. If you could remove one barrier from our housing delivery system, what would it be and why?
Just one?
Oh, that's what I thought too.
Pick the word.
Okay, I'm going to say two because they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
The high DCs and the lengthy approvals. Because we're stalling progress, we're stalling jobs, we're stalling productivity. When we don't have a strong foundation of housing, we are not able to attract talent, and we're hurting business as well. So I would say those two are my top.
I would say I would pick accessibility to CMHC financing, so more of ACLP, MLI Select type programs, and shorter timelines to have certainty around approvals.
It's a lot of it has to do in the financial. I would like to have more money to do more transitional housing because there's a huge need, and that is a direct investment in grant money. We do need more investment in programs like the ACLP, but also some tax reform to attract more capital to this country. We need more capital in the housing system, and we need some changes in the way that we tax these projects and the way that we finance these projects to attract more capital, because the government can't continue to have to act more and more and more into the housing continuum. We need to reduce. Government needs to be part of the housing continuum, but we need to use our tax system, our financial systems to spur the market to create the workforce housing that we need, that we never thought government would have to interfere 10 years ago. And we need to have the deep affordability to be the responsibility of the government. And unfortunately, at this point in time, organizations such as My Bill Canada Homes still has to get involved to produce housing for families that are 100,000, 120,000 of household income. And probably most of us in the room would think that this was unthinkable of a few years ago, but that's the reality that we have in front of us right now. And so we need to have systemic changes and to attract more capital for this industry.
That was one.
Money, money.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just say one thing?
No one's going to stop you.
I think we also need to start thinking about this problem as an opportunity more than a challenge. I've been saying this in the last 2 months.
Never miss a crisis.
Exactly. And it is, I think that we have a crisis of affordability. We have a crisis in the sector because people don't have projects to put people to work. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have the systemic changes done. It's an opportunity to create an incredible amount of affordable housing. It's an opportunity to pressure governments to take action in this file. It is an opportunity. And I think if we bring hope and opportunity to the table and partnership, I think we can move the dial.
On behalf of Canadian Club Toronto, thank you to our expert panel, Anna, Victoria, Jamie, and our moderator, of course, Nama, for leading such a compelling and important conversation. To our event sponsors, Ellis Don, Fengate, Faro, and Layuna, thank you again for your generous support. And a final thank you to our AV partner, VVC Live, for ensuring our events run smoothly. As we wrap, I'd like to highlight a couple of upcoming events. On December 12th, which is Friday, we're honored to welcome Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, the Honourable Anita Anand. January 8th, join us for our 49th annual Outlook, where we explore what 2026 holds for Canada's economy and politics. Please visit canadianclub.org for more information on these events, to become a member if you haven't already done so, and to view some of our on-demand content. Members and guests, thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you soon.